Hello, everyone, and welcome to the best webcast of the day. If you're looking at our title slide, are your job descriptions dynamic enough to drive performance? Then you've parked in the right place. We have an unbelievably exciting presentation for you today, so let's get rolling. That's me. I'm Shane York, Senior Analyst at HCI, and your humble moderator for today's webcast. After the presentation, if you'd like to reach me directly, you can email me at shane.york@hci.org. You can also follow me on Twitter at ShaneYorkHCI, and if you have LinkedIn account, let's link up too. Now we'll just go through some quick housekeeping tips. To listen to this webcast, I'm going to ask that you unmute your computer speakers and turn up the volume. To do this, go to the voice option at your top menu bar and click Join Audio. If you're having problems, you can speak directly with our technical expert at the number listed at the bottom of your screen. That's 866-538-1909. Or you can just send us a message through your Q&A option. Please be sure to ask some questions throughout the webcast, and we'll save a few minutes at the end for your thoughts and feedback. To ask a question, just click the Q&A button at the top of your screen, and you'll see that window pop right open. You can move that bad boy all over your desktop, but don't close it because we love those questions, and we want you to send them to us throughout the entire webcast. Today's webcast is brought to you by the good people at Halogen Software, where performance and talent management is made easy. We'd like to thank them for providing today's exceptional presenters, and for more information about Halogen Software and their solutions, you can visit them at www.halogensoftware.com. Here's today's agenda. We'll have just a minute more of me, and then we can get to our featured speakers straight away. Again, we're going to leave a little time at the end to wrap up and review your excellent questions. We are extremely lucky to have as one of our guest presenters, Suzanne Beatty, MSN and RN, who is an organizational development consultant with St. Anthony's Medical Center. Suzanne has been a human resource leader for more than a decade and has been focused on several leadership development programs at the healthcare facility. With an extensive HR systems implementation experience, she has recently spearheaded the hospital's initiative to link job descriptions to performance management systems in the support of broader talent management programs across the organization. With roots in the healthcare field, her work experience prior to human resources spans roles such as an ICU nurse, nurse manager, and RN educator. We're also thrilled to have with us Dr. Gordon Medbach, Senior Talent Management Consultant at Horizons. Gordon helps organizations create value by optimizing their talent. He combines strong people skills with his experience in counseling, teaching, training, and coaching, along with a technology consulting background in the field of human capital management. He also brings in-depth experience as an executive coach and career development consultant and has worked extensively with employees and managers in optimizing work engagement, performance, learning, and work-life balance. Gordon has a master's degree from the University of Chicago and a doctorate from Yale University, both with a focus in psychology. Right now, it is my pleasure to present to you Gordon Medbach.
Thank you very much, Shane. I appreciate that. And it's a pleasure, Suzanne, to be presenting with you. I think it's always an exciting opportunity when we can really share some of the theory about these important topics with the practical application that you bring to this discussion. So,
well, thank you, Gordon. I would agree.
Thank you. So I thought when we start here, the first thing is really to take a look at a little bit of humor on how job descriptions can actually torment us in certain ways. I find this one particularly amusing, is that changing a behavioral competency can completely alter the job's appropriateness for particular individuals. So I'm sure we've all had stories where this sort of slide was applicable, so I thought it might be a nice way to start off the discussion. The first thing we'd really like to look at before we jump into the content is get a sense of where you are with your current state of your job description content and the extent to which it's integrated with your performance management process. We kind of use this as a baseline to get a feel for where the audience is. So we really want to look at how many of you, for example, step one, have content that needs to be upgraded and are not currently integrated with performance management. Or those of you at option two, your content's in good shape but not currently integrated. Or three, your content needs to be upgraded but is currently integrated. Or fourth, you've got good content and integration with performance management.
Thank you, Gordon.
Yeah.
Everybody will just take a quick look at the evaluation and click one of the radio buttons. We can have our results in just a second. Looks like pretty much everyone has voted, and let's look at the results. What do you think, Gordon?
Yes, it's interesting. As expected, there's only 8% at the very top end with everything in good shape, which is completely understandable. We certainly see that frequently in our work. 45% at the end of needing upgrade and needing to be integrated. So, and then 30% in good shape but not currently integrated. So that would be a place where you're looking at a technology solution perhaps. And then 15% in the range of content needs to be upgraded but currently integrated. So thank you. I think that gives us a good sort of benchmark of where the audience is at this point. So moving on to the next topic, I want to give you an overview of the topics we'll be covering today. First is job descriptions as the foundation of talent management. One of the things that both Suzanne and I agree on very strongly is that your job description content really provides the foundation for all of your talent management applications. It's really the basis of the infrastructure. So we're really going to be making that message clear throughout the presentation today, and I hope you appreciate the importance of that as well. We want to look at how to create dynamic job descriptions that truly drive performance as opposed to just job descriptions that sit in somebody's hard drive and are really not used as a tool to help enhance performance and engagement. So we're going to look at that. How to leverage technology to build, manage, and integrate your content, extremely crucial at this point. And then fourth, the project management vision and challenges when upgrading your content. So that'll be the main topics we'll be covering. I'd like to turn it over to Suzanne to say a little bit about St. Anthony's and a little bit about the project that you have been engaged with in terms of your upgrade of your content.
Sounds great. Thank you, Gordon. I do want to tell you a little bit about our organization, St. Anthony's Medical Center. I'm hoping that telling you our story can illustrate some of the themes that we're covering in this presentation. So those real-life examples do help us to understand the story a little bit better. We're probably not unlike many healthcare organizations out there. We are an independent facility, so that does make us a bit unique. We're located in South St. Louis County, that's St. Louis, Missouri. We have about 4,400 employees, and our management team is made up of about 200 managers. That helps when you're comparing us to perhaps your organization, looking at the amount of individuals on a team undertaking a project such as revising job descriptions. We are an organization truly focused on employee development. We're very proud of that, and I think it's one of the pieces that makes us a very attractive organization and healthcare organization in our area. And our independence really helps us with our performance improvement initiatives. It makes us very agile to be able to make changes and be very lean in our processes. I'll talk a little bit about our talent management process to help you understand where our foundation is, and truly that we believe job descriptions are foundational to the work that we do. We have key business drivers that are probably quite similar to many other organizations, and especially healthcare organizations. We work to meet or exceed our budget through performance improvement processes. We have a strong focus on patient satisfaction and patient safety. We believe that our talent management processes fully support our key business drivers, and those talent management initiatives of staff development, employee engagement, and performance management are able to be brought alive through our work with our technology in Halogen software. We believe believe job descriptions are quite foundational to our work and our talent management work, and this is illustrated a bit in this thing that you see with job descriptions being very center and core. Gordon's going to illustrate job descriptions a bit different as foundational, but I believe that you can see here that many of our other initiatives in talent management are truly tied to the job descriptions. Right. I'll turn it back over to you, Gordon.
Thank you, Suzanne. And I just want to highlight also the reference to job-specific duties. That's one of the things we're going to look at in some detail, because we really believe that's a critical part of your job description, and it's what links your job descriptions to your performance management process. So we're really going to want to kind of drill down in that in a bit of detail.
And we hope to illustrate that for you a little bit later. Yes, thanks.
In terms of the job description, just to kind of elaborate on what Suzanne has already been talking about, as we're saying here, the job description with its various sections all streamlined and standardized in your organization is really what gives the foundation for your talent management processes. So we look at this as sort of the baseline building block for what you're going to be building in terms of your whole talent management solution. And as you look at different ways in which the job description interfaces, you can see that it really clearly is going to interface with your performance management process in the ways that we just saw with Suzanne's application. It's also going to tie in with your objective setting. Oftentimes you're going to want to link competencies specifically to strategic objectives in your organization, and it's often important to connect those to job roles and job-specific content as well. Certainly in recruitment, we all know that the job description is fundamental to your defining criteria for what you're looking for a candidate. Onboarding as well, you need to make sure that people can get proficient on the specifications of the job, so that is a critical component where it's going to populate those assessments. It's used for employee development, particularly in a lot of ways to look at career ladders and career matrices throughout the organization, all of which are really built on good, sound job descriptions. So as you can see, at every point in the talent management sequence or life cycle, we're going to see job descriptions playing a central part. Certainly succession planning, most of our succession plans are position specific, again taking us back to those criteria. And of course compensation is a place where a lot of your job description content is typically managed and is always important in terms of the market value and compensation value of particular positions. So what we want to emphasize here is that that foundation is used for talent management assessment processes across all of those applications. So you literally cannot afford not to have your content really in good shape to make sure that it's enabling all the processes that you want to be working with. So that's where we want to get, but let's look at the current state. Most organizations that we see are currently not linking their content to the performance management processes, and we saw a little bit of that in the initial poll. A lot of organizations are faced with outdated content. Sometimes it hasn't been updated or reviewed for quite a while. The perceived level of effort to update content is, of course, a huge issue. People look at the job when you've got, 500, 750, 1,000, 2,000 jobs. It looks like a huge effort. How do you sort of break that up and be able to do it and manage it in a smooth way, in a manageable way? The lack of enabling technology has been a major factor in what has made job description management difficult because there's a huge amount of data that needs to be managed in relationship to job descriptions, and without the right technology, you really are at a loss in terms of how to do that. So that's part of the new innovations in the market that we're excited about in terms of the capabilities there. And then in the final analysis, people are looking for ease rather than rigor when implementing their performance management technology. They'd rather not go to that job-specific level because it's just a lot more work as they see it. So we're trying to kind of help people get past that to see the value and how it can be done. The old paradigm, of course, is your job descriptions are written to meet recruitment, compensation, and compliance purposes, primarily, kept in Word documents and rarely viewed by the employer or manager, and not viewed as relevant by most managers or employees for ongoing performance management. This last point is critical because when you look at your performance review and it doesn't seem to reflect what your job is, you kind of immediately feel deflated, like, well, this isn't really going to be all that valuable. So the lack of connection is, of course, a huge concern. Another thing we see quite a bit is the proliferation of rogue job descriptions. It's not uncommon in our work to be, helping an organization streamline job descriptions, and they've got 750 employees and 745 job descriptions. I mean, it can happen very easily, as I'm sure you all know. So part of the task here is how do you streamline and reduce some of that. In this particular case, you can see she's doing what she can to figure out a way to position herself for a job description that's really been written for one specific individual. And I think many of you can relate to that being the case, that if people who've been in a job for a while, pretty soon that job fits them and really no one else. So again, that becomes an issue in terms of comprehensive talent management. Some of the challenges in moving toward quality job descriptions are addressing this outdated content, the lack of standardization, focus on tasks rather than outcomes and accountability in your job description. This is a point we're going to talk about in some depth a little bit here, is that you'll often see job descriptions with lengthy task lists that kind of become overwhelming, as opposed to how do you focus those job descriptions on the outcomes and the accountabilities that are critical for that job. So people have focus as opposed to just kind of feeling like they're overwhelmed with the number of tasks listed there. Sometimes the content's not well designed to support your talent management processes. Lack of resources to revise content, a very critical issue. Sometimes it just seems daunting with all the other projects you all need to manage in your departments to actually take on another one. This becomes another issue for organizations to address. Lack of standardized language and redundant phrasing. Sometimes there's 25 different ways to say a particular job requirement, and this, of course, just makes the data management more cumbersome and just less streamlined. In terms of the process and technology, one of the things we see is a siloed approach to job description management, where recruitment's doing one thing, compensation's doing another, and talent management is doing another. You've got performance management, particularly see this in healthcare quite a bit. Sometimes performance management might be owned in HR, but development is owned in the clinical area or in the line management area. And so getting all these groups to talk together and work together in designing the content that's going to support the processes is a critical piece here. The lack of alignment and integration among the stakeholders related to that. Another piece is job descriptions are often seen as compliance tools rather than talent management strategic tools. So we're really focusing here on how to make them strategic. And then oftentimes there's a poorly defined job description revision and maintenance process. Again, this sort of relates to the last point about technology. If you don't have a kind of button-down technology to manage this process, you kind of have a lot of rogue job descriptions, and it's difficult to kind of manage that process carefully. So for all these reasons, the job description management piece is a challenge. This particular cartoon I find particularly interesting because it often happens when you dig down and look at your job description, you say, whoa, this doesn't even fit. And the humorous part here is, of course, is probably based on a true story. The person's realizing, oh my gosh, I'm not even qualified for my job. But in healthcare, one of the critical research studies that we're aware of is that one of the reasons that many nurses leave their positions is because they don't feel adequately prepared for an adequate fit with the job description that they are slated to do. So you've got a new nurse coming in where the expectations are not clear. He or she is just not clear about what's expected of her. She's less likely to feel confident and good about the position and more likely to look at another opportunity. So particularly at that upfront level, having the onboarding process and the job descriptions really clearly defined in a smooth process makes a huge difference in terms of retention of your qualified talent. So, having said all that, some of the frequent pain points in the process are departments are unhappy with the quality of their content, and they may be critical of HR processes, feeling like they're not really adding value for them. Talent management initiatives or joint commission may be the common concern that drives people to want to look at some of these issues. Overwhelm at the thought of upgrading 500, 800, 1,500, or 3,000 job descriptions, a common issue we see in organizations dealing with this question. And just challenged by the complexity of integrating this content with performance management. For all these reasons, the people see the challenge in this process. But we want to say that there is hope. We're painting a picture of the difficulties just to underscore the fact that I think you're all aware of the challenge to be taken. But the new paradigm is really here with us and allows us the opportunity to bring all this together, where you've got job descriptions written to support your performance management, managed online, easily accessible, and available to managers and HR to build, revise, and improve. So this is the vision we're really moving toward here. An example of a job description template that we at Horizons use in our work with clients is this is an example of a description where you have well-defined categories for how you're going to describe your job information, your job summary, general requirements, etc., so that you've got a standard template or perhaps multiple templates depending on the specifications of your organization to really help streamline so that people have a standardized idea of what they're looking for with their content. And this is extremely helpful in managing these projects where instead of having, as I mentioned, a proliferation of lots of different general requirements or varying from department to department and organization to organization, to really take the time with your stakeholders to really define what are the fundamental requirements that we want to have included in our job description, what skill sets that we want to make sure we're recruiting for and have those defined. And when we're looking at things like physical demands for compliance purposes, making sure the job is well defined from that perspective, that you have those kinds of options well defined so that your jobs are clear and help support what's needed from an employee perspective. Finally, we want to look at how to link the performance management process to the job description, and as I mentioned earlier, the key link is the job-specific competencies, which we're going to be looking at here in just a moment. The future state that we're going for here is a dynamic job description that drives performance. Clear job summary to establish focus is something that really gives a clear statement of the purpose and focus of that job. Identify no more than 5 to 7 primary accountabilities in most cases for the job. I mention in most cases because there are exceptions. Sometimes nursing will want to have a larger competency model than 5 to 7. But for the most part, your jobs are 5 to 7 typically is a good focus for an individual in terms of a realistic picture of what it is they're going to prioritize in their day-to-day job. Converting the primary accountabilities into job-specific competencies. This is a very important skill to make your job descriptions more useful for talent management. Grouping your tasks under these competencies and then have well-defined performance measures embedded in your competency descriptions. We'll show you how to do that in just a moment. You also want to identify competencies that differentiate superior performance. This is something I really want to underscore, is that not to be forgotten, is that part of this competency focus is the idea of differentiating what makes an exceptional nurse different from an average nurse, or an exceptional technician, or an exceptional administrator. You want to identify what those behaviors are that make a difference and then include those in your job descriptions and orient people toward those behaviors. In this way, the job description becomes a tool for enhancing performance. And, of course, the integration of this all with your various talent management processes. So I'd like to turn it back over to Suzanne to talk a little bit about how you at St. Anthony's have taken on this process of transforming your job descriptions and using technology to support that process.
Thanks, Gordon. I'm happy to share our story. As you're going through the slides, it brought back when I entered into human resources 10-plus years ago, it was the job descriptions were more a cumbersome tool that we in human resources looked at frequently, but we weren't so sure how often the staff employees viewed the job descriptions. So over the course of the time I've worked in human resources, I've seen a transition, and I think it's an exciting time for us. The focus of the work that we want you all to undertake on job descriptions really isn't that of clerical. It isn't so much of cleaning up the language as it is making the job descriptions more effective. So with our belief at St. Anthony's that job descriptions could be very foundational to the work that we're doing in talent management, we felt that the amount of work, even though we knew it was going to be a large undertaking, was going to pay off and give us the outcomes we were looking for. We truly had the outdated job descriptions with a lack of standardization. I had mentioned earlier we had a management team of about 200, and it was the responsibility of this management team to write our job descriptions, which several years ago actually numbered close to 1,000 job descriptions. Over the course of time, we have combined certain jobs, such as the nurse. The basic nurse job at St. Anthony's is one job description, and then differentiated by some annual competency testing, which I'll cover a moment later. But it has been an integrated approach. With the onset of our use of technology, we have used halogen software. We've actually been able to speed up some of the approach that we've used, and that's what this slide covers. We really undertook preparation of transitioning to an automated performance management system starting in 2009, but 2010 was our first year that we did annual performance appraisals in the automated system in Halogen. At that time, we looked at the jobs that encompass here at St. Anthony's, and we kind of broke them into three categories: employees, management, and senior leaders. And we looked at some core competencies that we wanted to develop to define and create and underscore our mission and values in this organization. So we were able to do that with this technology approach by developing some core competencies for all employees, a similar matching group for management, and then for senior leaders. That's important because that related directly to the work that we did in the Phase 1 process with our job description builder, where we really went in and did some cleanup of those job descriptions. Again, I mentioned that the management team had original responsibility to write job descriptions. So when 200 people undertake writing job descriptions, you'd end up with a lot of variation in language, variation in approach to a job description. So by working through Phase 1 with our automated system, we were able to clean up a little bit of that information, and through the work of conversion services from Halogen software, we were able to import some of the information into the software, and that supported further our talent management processes. What we currently are in now is Phase 2, which is where we're going through and we're selectively updating the job description content. We're taking a look at the various sections. We follow very closely to what Gordon had recommended that they use, and focusing a lot of our work in this Phase 2 on transforming the competencies, the job-specific competencies, so they can be the most effective. It's not about quantity, but it's about quality of those competencies. take it to the next slide and talk a little bit about kind of a drill down of some of these components of Phase 2. We specifically are looking at, in our system, repurposing libraries for position qualifications. That was one of the first areas that Gordon talked about, is defining some of the qualifications for the job. Through that, it's our license and registration, specific, probably mostly to healthcare, but education requirements. The second point of that organizing physical job demands, is also something that we have undertaken as part of our position qualifications. We've used the software, the technology, to assist us by having more access to this section by our employee health and wellness team, which gives us great input to that physical job demand section. So we can ensure that it's not human resources or management team trying to define that, but actually getting the right project owner of the specifics of that project. And then finally, and the biggest undertaking that we are working on in our Phase 2 of our job description conversion, is really analyzing, cleansing, and creating libraries, creating categories for our job-specific duties. At St. Anthony's, our language is job-specific duties, but what I mean by this is true competency statements for a particular job. As Gordon mentioned, we are following suit with asking our managers to limit it to about 8 per job. And this was quite difficult for some of our managers. They really felt that to define very specifically the task that an employee needed to do would be setting that employee up for greater success. But what we found is giving general statements and then defining more specifically through an annual competency testing works better for us in healthcare. We also, through this Phase 2 project, needed to go back and eliminate some of the redundancies we had. I mentioned when we brought on the technology, we looked at core competencies. And those core competencies were not just something that the Human Resources Division defined. We actually used our Employee Advisory Council and a Leadership Advisory Council to help us design those core competencies. So it was a true reflection of our mission and values. But now we needed to go back and look at our competency statements for each of our jobs and make sure that we weren't repeating ourselves, because the core competencies such as communication, accountability, could remain, and then we could extract repetition in that job description, all again to make it more effective. We wanted to make sure it's not just a clerical experience, but that we are increasing the effectiveness of these job descriptions.
And Suzanne, I'd just like to add to that, I think that's a great point, that when you're doing this job description work, being able to leverage and be able to create competency models at the organizational level and at the higher levels, and then kind of bring that down to the job description, to this job specific, you can then sort of see, okay, we don't want to repeat or be redundant with what we've already described. So you get a streamlining just in that process, which I think can be very effective in terms of alignment.
And it has proven that way for us, Gordon. I think it gives the employees more confidence in the document, and it makes it more realistic for them, as opposed to just something that they need to look at and sign off on. When we look at the format for job-specific competencies, we kind of break it down into 3 areas, and Gordon and I are in sync on this. There's really a title, a name, secondly, a description, and then thirdly, key tasks, skills, behaviors, or standards. Again, not just an exercise, but we truly want to make the competency, the job-specific competency, more effective. So next is an example or a sample of a job-specific competency. We have identified the title and definition and given you that information here. I'll even further display it on the next one, where it breaks down into what we've talked about. The title and being assessment, the definition demonstrates the ability, and so on. And then those behavioral anchors, tasks, or skills, where we're talking about utilizing assessment data in clinical decision making through the use of analytical models and problem-solving tools. So it's not having a long, drawn-out competency statement, but a very concise, effective competency statement.
Just to add a point to that also, I think that there is a challenge in being able to craft these definitions well. And this is where the question often comes up, is how much should HR be managing this? How much can you expect managers to do? It's an interesting question. I'd be interested in hearing, Suzanne, in terms of your sense of who needed to draft the original sort of modified version here. Would you find that your team needed to have experts on your side to do that, or did you find that line managers were able to help define these themselves?
What we found to be most effective is we actually took some volunteers of some key directors and managers that wanted to work on this project in certain categories, such as some nursing directors and managers that were interested in this. and then members of the HR division through education, the education department, and our own organizational development area worked with these directors to help them craft the most effective competency statements.
Okay.
And then it kind of mushrooms from there, because then those that we worked with, those managers we work with, can serve as resources and key personnel for other managers going through the process. So it was more or less a train the trainer.
That's a great point. And you also get champions that way of the process. So people are owning it, line managers. They're seeing it as theirs, and it has a huge difference in terms of the morale and the impetus to move this through the organization, where it's not now something that HR is doing to us, but it's a tool that's collaborative with HR to create something that's going to be of value to the employee. So
I agree. I think the collaboration is truly the key there.
Cool.
The other point that I wanted to make, and I've mentioned core competencies, but in our example of core competencies, accountability on this slide, we also included additional standards underneath the definition, the key task skills. Then we've included some things that make it specific to St. Anthony's. So that was our way to hardwire our culture through direct illustration of our mission and values in our organization. And through taking the time to do this with each of our core competencies, 6 in total for employees, 9 for managers, 12 for senior leaders, we've really we've had positive feedback from the employees that's been very effective. The managers are very comfortable with being able to illustrate and coach employees by referring back to these illustrations of our additional standards. So I would recommend this as a very effective way to enhance your competency statements.
Excellent. And part of what you can see there is that the idea in the service standards, you've got now measurable criteria for deciding where a person is on this particular competency. So you're getting now more and more specific about what the behaviors are you're trying to encourage. So this is where it's becoming a tool to support rather than simply as we said, a bureaucratic instrument. So yeah.
And one last piece, building on your identifying that it's an illustration, is we can identify what it means to have a superior performer. This can be where we really identify, to be a high performer in this area, these are the achievements that you need to meet on a daily basis.
Thank you. Sounds good. Let's look at, again, just to underscore then this notion of the importance of criteria for superior performance is that make sure that those are included in there, because that's part of what you're trying to move people toward, is these higher levels of achievement and being able to define specifically what those behaviors are. It's interesting that often it's a behavioral competency that is the differentiator rather than a technical one, although it's not, I don't think, always the case, but it's often that more behavioral piece that makes the difference between your exceptional and your otherwise average performers. So just to summarize really what Suzanne has told us here, the dynamic job descriptions start with a well-defined job summary where you identify 2 to 4 of your primary accountabilities for the job right in the job summary. So by reading the job summary, which of course, now that job summary is going to be typically used for compensation purposes to determine what the level of that job is from a compensation perspective, and it will also be used by recruitment. So you want to have that job summary very well defined about exactly what's required there. And then converting the primary accountabilities into job-specific competencies, and then identifying the behavioral competencies that differentiate superior performance. So that's the challenge. And just to kind of walk through this process again from a slightly different perspective, a step back up, but looking here at the job summary, here if we look at the RN position, and I want to also say that even though we're drawing primarily from the healthcare market in some of our examples, that this is applicable well beyond healthcare. And for those of you who are in non-healthcare organizations, we find that particularly wherever the combination of compliance considerations where you need to be very specific about your jobs, plus the focus on strategic talent management, when those 2 components are both operating in your work environment, you're going to find this approach extremely important to be able to do. So having said that, with this example here, you can look at a summary of duties, and you can see by the underlying points here, delivery of coordinated nursing care, a verb and the phrase to identify exactly what's being done. Management and supervision of the related clinical activities, so you can see at what level that job is going to be managed. Supervising and directing, so you get a feel right away by the use of the verbs in the first paragraph exactly what's going to be required. And then it's in the second paragraph, provides individualized goal-directed nursing care, including assessment, planning, implementation, and evaluation. So in a sense, from that summary, in 2 paragraphs, you've got a pretty good picture of what that competency model is going to look like and what you're going to be holding people accountable for. So that's the art of this, is being able to get it as succinct but really include the detail that's needed. At the level of the job-specific competencies, you have the title. In this case, assessment was one of the ones that we noticed was there. And then a high-level description. Complete an accurate assessment of all required physical systems without any patient complaints and ensuring quality patient safety and care. Let me say just something a little bit about this phrase. What I like about this and what I think is important is that you'll notice the so what, or the in order to, the purpose is embedded in the statement. Completes an accurate assessment without any patient complaints and ensuring quality patient safety and care. So in reading that, you get a feel for what it is that's the outcome that we're trying to go for. Now, this is not easy to do, and it's not easy to get all of your job descriptions at this level of detail and focus. It's something to aspire to, and it's something I think is important, but you also have to deal with the art of the possible, too. If you can get just a clear, good label and summary statement to start, that's a good step. But I do think that if you can include this more focused statement of the outcome statement in the description, it's even stronger. And this is an example of the what and the why. You want to be able to describe in your descriptions and in your task statements what it is you're asking to do and why they're doing it, so that it's really, again, an orienting toward the purpose of the job and what it is they're trying to accomplish from an outcome perspective. You'll notice that you can also include a more detailed task list underneath these job descriptions, underneath the competencies. Often in healthcare, the challenge is how do we preserve the detail that we need but still not have to overwhelm people with assessing 40 different items on a performance review. Well, in this case, the tasks related here are complete a physical systems assessment within 30 minutes of the patient admission and within 1 hour of coming on duty. Those numbers are very important, because why are they important? If you're late in doing that assessment, it takes you 2 hours to get there, and it's more, and maybe within 2 or 3 hours of coming on duty, patient satisfaction scores are going to be highly affected by that kind of time lag, and that's going to affect the whole quality of the hospital and the way it's functioning. So these are really very strategically driven details that ensure that the behavior that you want to ensure high patient satisfaction and patient safety are being addressed by having those kind of descriptors in your job description itself. So again, to Suzanne's point, it's not just a bureaucratic, make sure your I's are dotted and your T's are crossed. It's really a strategically, how do you take the strategic vision and make it applicable at a behavioral level? That is a challenge, and that's really what we're talking about here. Is if you can get your job descriptions to that point, you really have a tool here that can really support performance management. Of course, we know that defining detailed tasks is nobody's favorite job. Here's one of my favorite ones here. We're having an ISO 9000 audit this week. Take a look at your documented job descriptions and make sure it's what you're doing if the auditor asks. And Dilbert says, well, according to I'm some sort of engineer, as if we had time for that. It's like people, I have found that given the choice to do your income taxes or write a defined detailed task list of a job description, people will tend to choose their income taxes over this. I appreciate it's not something people enjoy, but truth is, if you can get the kind of support and investment that Suzanne talked about and people get the strategic value of it, you can inspire people to create this content that will actually enable them to really see their job descriptions as a tool and something they can look at and feel proud of as opposed to something that feels irrelevant. So believe me, when you think that we are spending how many hours a day at our jobs, that it's well described and accurately reflects what we're doing is actually a contribution to the person doing the job. So I hope people can appreciate that. Pulling it all together, you'll see a sample job description that has a high-level description, clinical systems assessment, high-level label, the description in bold, and then the detailed tasks that relate to that. You will have access to this PowerPoint. I'm not going to ask you to go through all the detail here of reading each of these, but you will have, if you'd like, you can contact us later and get a copy of this, and I think Shane can also describe how you can reach this is accessible to you, so you will be able to keep this as a reference for yourself as well. One of the other challenges that we look at is the design of the competency model in library, which Suzanne has talked already quite a bit about in terms of including the core competency model to start with that alignment to mission and values. Then oftentimes we'll see that at the managerial and executive levels that people will tend to use models that are level-based. So you might have executive-level competencies that you're assessing people at, and then managerial or supervisory level, and may not do as much job-specific detail in your performance management process at that level. Typically at the executive level, you're letting your goal process be the focus for the more specific accountabilities related to deliverables, and then you're getting the behavioral piece through your competency model. So it's not uncommon to see that job-specific piece that we're talking about really kick in more deeply at the staff level. But even having said that, when you're looking at succession planning or development career ladders, there's a big difference whether you're going to become, if you're looking for a successor who's going to go into a finance position as opposed to an IT position or opposed to an HR person. So you do need to have those job-specific details in your back pocket as part of the job description, because it will influence the possible successor feeder into that job. So, but in terms of performance management, typically you will not see that as much in the performance management, though you will see it at the staff level. And again, this is sort of speaking to that, the efficiencies again. If you can define your core competencies across broad functional areas as well, like IT, HR, marketing, sometimes you'll find that you can get efficiencies there where you might have, for example, a core competency model for IT that all jobs need to include, and then when you get to the job specific, you don't need to duplicate that effort. So again, it helps to provide that streamlining. And then as you go down toward the more specific jobs. But looking for those places where there are commonalities is really important in terms of supporting that idea of career development and career matrices as part of the design of what we're looking at. Suzanne, I wonder if you might be able to say a little bit about how St. Anthony's has managed the competency library structure question, because I think this is important in terms of how people can use these tools to sort of manage their content more effectively.
Oh, I'd be happy to. And as we've talked about when we undertook phase 2 of this job description transition, the competency portion is what we've spent a lot of time on. And we've had countless meetings in our division to talk about what would be the best and most effective way to structure this competency library, knowing that through our technology system, Halogen, our end users, our employees, can view job descriptions, but our managers can hopefully work and then transition to improve the job descriptions over time. So we wanted to make sure that our structure of our competency library fully supported the end users, employees and managers, and also made sense for the philosophy that we approach our job descriptions with. So we did group families and roles together, as illustrated here in some of our abbreviations. We tried to put environmental services together. We put, as Gordon mentioned, management and senior leaders in a separate competency library. And that truly is, we are starting to undertake succession planning with our current software, and having those competencies identified in a separate library so we could work to enhance them does support fully our succession planning initiative. The next page is another screen print from our system that talks a bit about how I mentioned end users, because the job descriptions want to be effective for the employees, the end users, but we have made that hopefully more real to them by having a sign-off process anytime we update or have a new job description. So this is an employee statement of understanding. This is what the employees read at the end of their job description, and in a process, they go through and do an electronic signature on the job description. Again, not to make it clerical, but hopefully, or strictly for compliance purposes, but hopefully to increase engagement. A lot of our work in the HR division and many human resources divisions across the nation is to increase engagement of the employee population. We recognize that our greatest resource is our employees, so we want to make sure that they are supported fully and comfortable in the job they're doing. So to know what's expected of them is very important to our employees, especially here at St. Anthony's. We found that by clear job descriptions and having a process by which they look at them anytime they're updated, increases the trust of the employees in our organization and with their manager directly. It improves that relationship with their manager. And then they know what to do to work to meet their job expectations and what superior performance might look like. So while this is an overwhelming undertaking to look at job descriptions, be it 1,000 or 1,500 or even 800, 500, it can impact some of the important work that we do in human resources. The last screen print that I want to show you is actually some steps for the job description sign-off. the employees know that anytime a new job description occurs, if they would transfer it to a new position, they would essentially have 14 days. The automated system would send them a task to go in and look at their job description and then do the electronic sign-off. So this is just a screen print from within our Halogen system to give you a little indication of what technology can do to support this process, so that all of the very great work that a human resources division along with management team does to impact the job descriptions can be felt by those end users, by the employees. Go ahead, Gordon, please.
I was going to say, Suzanne, thank you. I mean, I love the way you're talking about the way in which this can be used and really enhance engagement with the end users. We want to talk a little bit about the blend between competency skill checklists and job descriptions, and I just have this really as a transition slide for being able to talk about what you're doing with this as well at St. Anthony's. But the idea of identifying the competencies and skills required for proficiency for new hires is a critical piece here. Your onboarding process may have a different competency model than you have in your ongoing job description, so we'll want to talk a little bit about that. Creating an onboarding review process and showing how competencies link to ongoing job-specific competencies. Could you say a little bit about how you've managed this sort of balance between the skills checklist competency management component and the job description component in healthcare?
Sure. What we've done, and I have an illustration here of how we've linked the competencies to the job description, is we have actually identified those competency statements, again, that we've worked hard to make concise and effective, and have our competency checklists, quote unquote, link back to the related job-specific duty. And again, remember in St. Anthony's terminology, job-specific duty is the same as job-specific competency. So that the work that an employee is doing flows back and forth from, again, that foundation, which is our job description. And that connection helps the employee, again, feel confident that what we're asking them to do is very consistent and increases their trust and engagement.
Well, and the other thing I just want to add, and we won't have time to follow up on this here, but just the balance between how you use competency assessments to deal with those more departmental specific factors of a job, so that you can still maintain a streamlined job description but allow for that departmental variation using the competency management pieces. I think another component that I think St. Anthony's has done very creatively, and I encourage all of you who are interested in that to explore that further with us, with Suzanne afterwards.
Again, it was a great negotiating factor when we were working with managers to narrow down and make more concise the job description. So this was a great way to come back and say that they could get a great level of detail by linking the related job-specific duty to their competency measurements. Perfect.
So the idea here is the ongoing review of competencies. You don't need to review the same competency checklist for ongoing competency assessment. One of the people that I really believe, Donna Wright, has a very nice model for doing competency assessments and talking about this balance we're talking about. So I just want to reiterate this here, that you really want to use a kind of review of what are the key competencies in your job from a strategic perspective. That may modify. You might want to review those situations on a yearly basis, and in some cases you may end up modifying the job description if a new piece of technology or something has been added to the job that needs to be on an ongoing basis. But in other cases, you might just be modifying a competency assessment process that's separate from the performance review. And we've talked a little bit about creating the libraries. I'm a little aware of time here, so I'm just going to kind of move through this quickly. Do you want to say something quickly about the competency library piece?
I think I've covered this in length. I do want to emphasize that if you're using technology, make sure you tap into whatever conversion services or input for the consultant, because it's extremely valuable when looking at how to make this more effective. So I think that's a piece that I would encourage everyone to do.
Okay, good point. So finally, lessons learned here from the experience. Involve the stakeholders in planning and phases of technology implementation. Extremely important. This needs to be a process that's owned by the line management, and it can be by involving them fully. Coordinate the project timeline with the organizational priorities. Get input from your consultants as needed if you're working with consultants, and a robust education for your end users. You mentioned here, Suzanne, communicate 8 times and 8 ways is an important piece of all of this.
Yeah, just because we put communication out there doesn't mean that the end user has fully embraced it. So make sure that you're continuously out there supporting the technology and supporting the initiative.
Perfect. Totally agree. So the big readiness question is, what is your current state? How mature are your current content, and What's the desired future state? And how ready are you to get to that point, and what resources do you need to be able to invest in this process? You need to look at your current state of your content, your desired future state, and this particular question of resources. Do we have the resources we need to do it, and what scope could we undertake? Because you don't necessarily have to do everything all at once. In fact, we really recommend a sort of staged approach is often more effective. One of the important things in this process is to create a vision for your job description infrastructure. This is really making your case for business case for why this is important with your high-level management. Your job descriptions are going to be redesigned and standardized. You're improving the quality, reducing the number of job descriptions, as we've talked about quite a bit here. Key criteria for performance evaluation, increased employee and manager engagement. Incredibly, that point is probably the most important in the whole piece. And best leveraging your investment in your technology. So these are the kinds of points that you need to really be able to focus on to create that vision and get the organization behind this effort. As again, it's not a clerical effort, it's really a strategic effort that people need to see the vision for. There also needs to be a vision from the project management perspective of well-defined processes, and these are things that in the projects that we do really help people with a toolkit to be able to manage these processes. Having clearly defined standards for your job description rewrite effort and the process for validation and how you're going to manage those particular pieces of the process. Good solution design in terms of your job structure, content libraries, and overall content. And the knowledge transfer through each phase of the project. Your staff and your management are going to be working together to build this job description infrastructure, and you'll be working closely on an ongoing basis in the whole process. In terms of expected results that we've seen from these kind of projects, redesigned content is often of a much higher caliber. It's managed efficiently in your job description technology. It helps you streamline the number of jobs, often by more than 25%. Increases HR visibility and value with internal clients. Again, this is something where I've been impressed with organizations we've worked with that really see that HR here is really contributing to their work effectiveness, and it really is appreciated. Increase employee manager engagement with the process and high levels of acceptance of both the technology and content. So there are a number of project results that you can expect. Greater ownership of the content by the employees because they helped create it. It's theirs and not something that was handed over to them. So again, very important. One of the things we want to look at and help you look at here at this point is what challenges are uppermost in your mind when anticipating or upgrading your job description content. You've heard a lot already about the challenges, the opportunity, what can be done. What are the places that are most critical for you in terms of challenges? Internal resources is a big one, obviously. The need for enabling technology to make all this possible. Executive buy-in, often very important. Budget considerations can be very important. And in some respects, all of these, I think, are factors that can play in. So they can play in to all of them. So, Shane, if you can let me know when the results are out, I will.
I think we're good.
We're good, okay.
Yeah, what do you think?
It's interesting that over 50% are seeing all of the above as considerations, and I think that is accurate to some degree. They often are. And what's interesting to me is internal resources. Actually, that's not a surprise. I think that's a key factor we see. Budget considerations are not driving decisions on this, which is great. In other words, people are really looking at what makes it possible and not seeing budget as a constraint in that. So it's an interesting projection of all of that, and thank you for your feedback on that. Finally, we want to say that managing the process, rewriting all your content is a major commitment. You need the right team in place, the right tools, templates, and reference guides, and you need the right enabling technology. And hopefully, we've given you a sense of what those possibilities are to help you in your creating your vision of what you can do with your organization to move in this direction. At this point, I think we'd just like to turn it over to questions and your responses of anything that you might want to ask us at this point.
Fantastic. That was a wonderful webcast. Thank you so much. We do have a question from David. David asks, did you use existing competencies or did you write and develop your own descriptions? Otherwise, do you have content in your system for providing a starting point?
Suzanne, do you want to start with that one, and then I'll pick up on it?
I will. We actually, in using our technology solution, the purchase came with some competencies in there, specific even to healthcare. So that was a great starting point for us to go in and evaluate. And then if we wanted to create some of our own content, we tried to ensure that it had some of the concise nature that we've been talking about in the webcast today.
Right. And I'll just add that working with Horizons, we've done a number of these projects over the last several years, and we're in the process of building out a competency dictionary that we feel will help address exactly that concern. In other words, giving somebody something that enables people to have a starting place as opposed to needing to start from scratch. So it's an interesting challenge because I think the market has needed something like this. There hasn't really been a really good, detailed, thorough model, particularly in the healthcare area. So it's actually something we're giving a lot of attention to at this point.
Great. We have another question from Tracy. She asks, what experience have you had in using ONET to standardize descriptions?
I'd like to jump on that one, if I might, because I've done a lot of work with the government. I always find ONET frustrating. I mean, it's such a wonderful effort to have so thoroughly documented every conceivable task, and it's operating from the task-based model of job description building, and it's certainly an important, you have to include job description analysis in the buildup of your jobs, but I do find the ONET gets so granular and so detailed. It's really not a talent management focused system, in my opinion. It's not really orienting towards strategic talent management. It's more oriented toward grading jobs and categorizing jobs from ultimately a compensation perspective. So I've had mixed feelings about it. I often will use it as a reference point, but I end up finding myself going elsewhere for my final descriptions of job-specific competencies and building the content. So I hope that answers your question, but it's certainly something I'd be happy to explore with you further if you'd like to talk about.
Perfect. We have another question from Stacy. She asks, how do you measure the return on your investment? The ROI.
Suzanne, do you want to speak for that with regard to
No, I certainly will, and I've spoken to the fact that we feel that this work in the arena of talent management directly impacts our employee engagement, and I think that we've been able to measure a bit of our ROI. Again, we're still in process for all of this, but we are seeing increased engagement, and research leads us to the understanding that increased employee engagement in healthcare directly impacts patient satisfaction. So all of this being very important to us, we think that this endeavor has been well worth our time and energies.
Yeah, it's an interesting, thank you. I think it's an interesting question as to what, how rigorously you can do the ROI analysis. In some ways, it's a bit of a challenge because, on a surface level, it's just intuitive. If you've invested particularly in a talent management suite from a technology perspective, you're immediately presented with the question, well, let's make sure our content is good. If you don't have good content, it's sort of the garbage in, garbage out phenomenon. So on an intuitive level, it's pretty obvious that you need this kind of content quality. But I think the ROI piece, to me, it's kind of like, how do you determine the ROI of a ledger system for finance, for example? Well, without a ledger system, you can't do budgets, and without budgets, you can't manage the costs. And so you need the ledger system to do all those other things. I think the same thing is true with your job description content. You need that infrastructure in order to manage talent in all those other areas. The real ROI is how you end up retaining people, building the job description matrices and career ladders that provide a retention model that allow people to see a vision for themselves in their organization and stay with you. Those are the things that really are where the ROI comes up, but you need the infrastructure to do it. So it's really more making the case for the sort of connection of how this relates to enabling other processes that are critical, and I think that's where you'll make your strongest case with management.
Great question.
Yeah, very good questions. I appreciate that.
They are. We have time for possibly one more. This is a question for Suzanne from Alexa. She wants to know, you showed an employee that is required to sign off on their job description after being on the job for 14 days. How is movement detected? Is Halogen system your HRIS, or does it work in conjunction with it?
It works in conjunction with our HRIS. We manage transfers through the HRIS system, and then that information is uploaded into Halogen. And the notifications to the employee that they have a task to go in and sign off on their job description does happen through the Halogen system. And we can do email notifications in addition to the employee logging into their Halogen system. So we spend a lot of time in orientation and with our new employees to make sure that they're comfortable with the system. Again, our system's only effective as much as the end users will use the technology.
Wonderful. Okay. I believe we have just one more question, and this is an open question. If you'd like more information from our underwriter, Halogen, please just click the yes or the no, and we can follow up. Otherwise, I'd like to thank Gordon and Suzanne so much. This has been a fantastic webcast. I'd also like to thank all of our HCRA members for spending some time with us today, and a special thanks to Halogen Software for their gracious support. We look forward to seeing everyone at our future webcasts. So thank you so much. Goodbye and happy trails.